Okay, let's think about this. Do you really believe in free will? I mean, really. Imagine if every single thought, every single action wasn't a choice, but just a forced response.
It's a pretty unsettling thought, isn't it? Challenges everything we assume about being human.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where we're going today. We're doing a deep dive into a profoundly unsettling but honestly fascinating text from 1902. It's called Is Man a Free Agent? Written by Loryea under the name Santinelli.
Yeah, and this isn't just some dusty old book. It's a really radical challenge to how we see ourselves, our minds, our place in the world. He wasn't just theorizing idly. He believed he had proof.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack Santinelli's, frankly, extraordinary claim that man is just a mere machine. We'll explore how he uses this idea of the law of suggestion and even hypnosis to try and prove his deterministic view.
And it challenges everything from, medicine at the time to our whole concept of free will. Prepare for some definitely surprising moments, things that might make you rethink your own choices.
Okay, so to really get Santinelli's world, we have to start with that huge claim. Man is a mere machine, he puts it bluntly. Every thought and action is forced, possessing no willpower, and in no way responsible for his actions. Wow, that's quite a starting point.
It really is. No beating around the bush there. And for him, this isn't just an opinion. It's like a fundamental law, like gravity. He calls the operating principle the law of suggestion.
The law of suggestion.
Okay.
Okay, how does he define that?
He says suggestion is simply anything that arouses an action. Could be your environment, something happening in your body, or something external. He even claims the phrase law of nature is basically meaningless unless you understand it as this law of suggestion.
So it's the ultimate cause behind everything.
That's his view, yeah. It's the prime mover.
Okay, so if this law of suggestion rules all, then our thoughts, they aren't really ours, are they? He says, thoughts are forced, not chosen. How does he justify that? It feels like it strips away, well, everything about how we think we think.
It does feel that way. His breakdown is quite mechanistic. He defines an idea as just a percept through any sense. Simple enough. But then a thought isn't some spark of genius. It's just two or more associated ideas.
Associated ideas.
Yeah, and the more ideas you link together, the more complex, or as he puts it, comprehensive the alleged thought. So creativity, in his view, isn't free will. It's just a really intricate chain reaction of forced associations, all triggered by suggestions from the environment.
That's a really different way to frame thinking. And he connects this directly to our senses too, right? He talks about conceiving versus comprehending.
Exactly. He says for something to be conceived, just grasped at all, it needs to hit at least two senses. But to be comprehended, like truly understood, that takes three or more senses.
Okay, give me an example.
He uses a cigar. To really comprehend a cigar, he says you need all five senses. The form, sight, its use, feeling, how you hold it, its name, sound, the taste, the smell. Without that full sensory picture, your understanding is incomplete.
And this leads him to a pretty stark conclusion about what humans can actually understand.
It does. He states, nothing but matter is comprehensible to man. And therefore, things like spiritual concepts, he says they're incomprehensible because they don't directly affect our physical senses in the same way.
Right, so if only matter is comprehensible and thoughts are just forced associations, what happens to willpower? We talk about it all the time.
He basically dismisses it. He says he cannot comprehend the concept of willpower, calls it a conceit. And then he throws out this really provocative idea
Jesus.
that what we call willpower might actually be, wait for it, lack of correlative ability, density, thick-headedness.
Whoa. So willpower isn't strength, it's slowness or an inability to make connections.
That's his suggestion, that what looks like mental fortitude might actually be a limitation. You're just not processing new suggestions or associations quickly or effectively. It's not strength, it's a kind of cognitive block.
That completely flips the script on self-discipline, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Your perceived strength is actually a blind spot.
Exactly. It's one of those aha moments in his text that just stops you in your tracks. It's not about having strong will. Maybe it's about not having enough counter suggestions or being unable to form those new links.
Okay, my head's spinning slightly. It gets even stranger, doesn't it? He talks about where the mind actually is.
Oh, yeah. He says what we usually think of as the mind, the cerebrum, the thinking brain. That's just the realizing intelligence. It just becomes aware of things.
Just realizes. So where's the actual mind, according to Santinelli?
He claims the actual mind is the consensus of all actions acquired during gestation, and it's located in the sympathetic nervous system. He calls it the abdominal brain.
The abdominal brain. Okay, that's really out there,
Yeah.
especially for 1902. So our gut feelings are Literally our mind.
That's essentially what he's proposing. This sympathetic system, this abdominal brain, is the actual machinery that does the work. And crucially, he says it can act independently of the cerebrum, the thinking part.
So how does this abdominal brain run the show in our daily lives then, if the conscious brain is just sort of tagging along?
Well, the implication is that our deepest drives, our gut reactions, our fundamental responses, they originate there. It's like the hard drive storing all our past experiences and automatic responses, which then force our actions. The cerebrum, it just kind of notices what the abdominal brain decided.
It's like we're puppets, and the strings are being pulled from our gut based on everything that happened even before we were born.
That's a good analogy for his view. It suggests our core mental processes aren't conscious or cerebral, but deeper, more primal, constantly reacting to stimuli based on that stored history.
Okay, so brains are association machines, forced by the environment, run by this. Abdominal brain, what does this mean for language? Especially when we try not to do something, like saying don't.
Yeah, this is fascinating. He makes this linguistic and philosophical claim that negation is an inconceivable word.
Inconceivable.
He argues everything is positive, positive for or positive against. So when you say don't do X, you're actually bringing X into focus, making a positive affirmation of X in the mind.
Right, like the classic, don't think of a pink elephant.
Exactly. What immediately pops into your head.
Pink elephant.
Precisely. So even trying to negate something activates the thought, the image, in that abdominal brain. It's a really practical aspect of his law of suggestion. We're constantly suggesting things to ourselves, often the opposite of what we intend, just by how we phrase things.
That's subtle. Wow. It makes you really aware of how language might be working against us sometimes. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. How did he try to prove all this? He mentions his laboratory.
Yes, hypnosis. He claims that for 12 years, he studied somewhere between 10 and 25 hypnotized subjects every night.
Every night. For 12 years, that's dedication.
Intense dedication. He saw these subjects as slowed down machines. Hypnosis for him was the key to comprehend cause and effect because things happened more deliberately, more observably.
So how did he define hypnosis? Was it like sleep?
He called it a simulated sleep. But here's a key distinction he made. It differs from real sleep, because in hypnosis, the subject actively holds the thought of sleep. In actual natural sleep, he argued, there's no thought at all.
Okay, so it's not unconsciousness. The person is still thinking, in a way.
Sort of. He described a hypnotized subject as being in a perfectly normal condition, but, and this is crucial, with a specific thought aroused through hearing, usually the operator's voice that their own senses fail to contradict.
So the suggestion overrides their normal sensory input.
That's the idea. Their senses aren't providing strong enough contradictory evidence, so they accept the operator's suggestion as reality. It implies they're conscious, but their reality filter is being bypassed.
Right, and a really key point for his whole deterministic argument comes in here, doesn't it? About what you can actually do with hypnosis.
Yes, absolutely central. He insisted that nothing new can be introduced into the mind of a hypnotized subject. You can only revive and activate existing memory actions, those associated ideas already stored in the abdominal brain.
So you can't plant a totally new idea or belief.
According to Santinelli, no. You can only work with what's already there. Which, perfectly supports his idea that all actions are forced responses based on prior experience, not spontaneous creations. It's a critical limitation in his model.
That really goes against the popular image of hypnosis.
Yeah.
Like stage hypnotists making people do bizarre, out-of-character things. He gets some great examples, right? The chair. Yeah.
Yes, the red hot chair. Classic Santinelli example. You tell a hypnotized subject their chair is red hot and they'll jump up.
Right. Because you told them to.
No, that's his point. They jump not because you ordered them to, but because the suggested environment, this chair is red hot, forces an action based on their deep pre-existing stored experience and reaction to the idea of heat. Their senses, under suggestion, don't contradict the hot chair idea, so the automatic reaction kicks in.
So the operator just provides the trigger, the suggestion, and the subject's own history does the rest. It's reactivating an old fear or response.
Exactly. The abdominal brain holds that memory of heat and pain, and the suggestion just pulls that file, essentially.
Okay, and what about the barber example? That one really highlights the limits.
Right, the barber and the customer. He wanted to stage a shaving scene under hypnosis. He found the worst person to play the barber was an actual barber.
Why? You'd think they'd be perfect.
Because a real barber's sense of feeling is highly trained. They'd immediately know the tools were fake, no sharp edge, wrong weight. That feeling memory would contradict the visual suggestion.
Ah, I see. So who was the best person?
He said, choose a fastidious young man, someone meticulous, who knows all the visual steps of shaving, maybe watches carefully, but lacks that ingrained memory of feeling associated with real tools. The operator could deceive the subject's sight, but not their deeply rooted sense of touch or feel if it was already trained.
That really drives home the point that suggestion works on existing sensory memories and struggles against deeply embedded ones, especially touch or feeling.
Precisely. It shows the hierarchy in his system.
Yeah.
And it confirms that the abdominal brain holds these core experiences. And he was absolutely convinced people couldn't just pretend to be hypnotized, right?
Yeah, he was adamant. Said anyone claiming they faked it was deliberately lying. Why was he so sure?
He believed the physical responses were too consistent, too involuntary. The specific expressions, muscle tension, the subtle physiological reactions. He argued a faker couldn't consistently replicate those because they were forced responses from the mind, the abdominal brain. It wasn't voluntary acting.
He had a lot of faith in his observational skills there. So what about waking someone up? Were there limits to the operator's power?
He saw the operator's voice as the absolute key. To awaken someone, you had to startle him, often with a sharp phrase like, all right, maybe combined with a clap.
A sudden break in the suggestion.
Exactly. And he makes this really strong claim. If a subject is awakened properly, then post-hypnotic suggestion is an impossibility.
Wait, really? No lingering effects? That contradicts a lot of what people think about hypnosis today.
Totally. He implied that if post-hypnotic suggestions seemed to work, it meant the operator hadn't fully unbuilt the original suggestion during awakening. The subject wasn't truly awake in his terms. It shows how much control and responsibility he placed on the operator to manage that suggestive environment.
Okay, so that's the individual mind, the hypnosis. But Santinelli applied these ideas much more broadly, didn't he? He had some pretty radical views on society, medicine.
Oh, absolutely. He launched a really scathing critique of the medical science of his day, accused doctors of just treating effects, not causes. He hated deductive reasoning, said it is not reasoning, and basically called doctors superstitious.
What were his specific complaints about medicine?
Well, he completely rejected germ theory, which, was still relatively new, but gaining ground in 1902. He called vaccination calsyphilis.
Wow.
Yeah. And he claimed it caused other diseases like syphilis and tuberculosis. His core argument was that doctors were missing the real cause, which for him was always some kind of physical irritation plus the power of suggestion deeply rooted in the patient's environment.
So medicine was just papering over cracks, ignoring the suggestions involved. He even had thoughts on how medicine should taste, apparently.
He did. He argued that nasty medicine was actually far more effective than nice medicine.
Why on earth?
Because it impacts more senses. The foul taste, the strong smell, maybe even the look of it creates a much stronger, more potent suggestion of doing something significant than pleasant tasting stuff.
Oh.
It's all about the law of suggestion.
Okay, that's consistent, I guess. And what about the doctor's role?
He said a real doctor shouldn't even need the patient to describe symptoms. They should be able to diagnose independently, then give strong suggestions of health, and, crucially, create a healthful environment in their office.
What did that look like?
Flowers, birds, live animals, signs of life and vitality, absolutely no smell of drugs, no visible instruments. The whole place should suggest health and peace, overriding any suggestion of illness the patient brings in.
It's all about controlling the environment to control the suggestions.
Exactly. For him, pain is a thought, often triggered by physical irritation. Remove the irritation, manage the thought through suggestion, and the pain subsides. He did admit, though, that only a nervous headache can be cured through hypnosis, suggesting some awareness of purely psychological components even within his framework.
So the environment is everything. How did this apply to heredity? That was a big topic then, too.
Huge, and he just dismisses it, basically. He flat out states, heredity is a word that means nothing.
Nothing, so traits aren't passed down.
Not in the blood, he argues. He says the inheritance is not in the blood, but in the environment. His example is a drunkard's child. The child doesn't inherit alcoholism itself. They inherit the environment of having a drunkard father, the stress, the modeling, the whole atmosphere.
That's a very early nature versus nurture argument, leaning heavily on nurture or environment. Did he have examples?
A very vivid one. He talks about a 3-year-old girl named Lily. He described her quite harshly as a 2-legged hog because her mother apparently overfed her and she was inactive.
Okay.
But his point was, he drastically changed Lily's environment. Strict diet, rules like being dismissed from the table if her eyes wandered, even one instance of spanking for bladder control issues. And he claims her appearance and behavior transformed dramatically in just 5 days.
5 days. That's incredibly fast.
He used it as proof positive that environment trumped any supposed inherited traits or disposition. It was all about the external conditions, the suggestions.
That's quite the story. So, if environment is the key driver, how did he view things like crime or insanity?
Consistently, he declared that crime and insanity are physical diseases, not moral failings, not purely mental problems, but physical issues.
Physical diseases. So, what was the cure?
He proposed sending criminals to hospitals, not prisons. There, they should receive proper or official treatment, which sounds like interventions aimed at removing sources of physical irritation, particularly what he called sexual irritation, which he linked to violent acts like rape. The goal was to treat the physical root cause and break up the nerve habit.
That's what incredibly progressive for 1902 in seeing crime as medical, but the specific treatment sounds quite strange and potentially problematic today.
Definitely. But it flows directly from his core idea. Actions are forced by physical or environmental suggestions. And this connects back to his point about negation, too. Remember, don't think of a pink elephant.
Right. Avoid don'ts.
Exactly. He warned they make a positive affirmation against ourselves. To influence people effectively, he said, you must always talk in affirmatives, using a positive for, and thus hold the picture in your hearer's mind. Create the positive image you want them to move towards.
That actually sounds like pretty solid advice for communication, regardless of the rest of his theory. Did he give an example of that?
He did. He described a minister who wanted to combat drinking in his parish. Instead of just lecturing about the evils of the saloon, which just keeps the saloon in focus, this minister built a club.
An alternative environment.
Precisely. He provided a positive alternative, a different set of suggestions, subtly leading people towards that new environment and eventually prosperity, rather than just railing against the negative.
Create the good, don't just fight the bad. It really makes you think about how we try to persuade or change behavior, doesn't it?
It really does. For Santinelli, genuine change comes from shifting the environment and the suggestions, not from judgment or moral condemnation. It's about redesigning the system that forces the behavior.
And he even applied this to himself, didn't he? He talks about his own personal transformation.
Yes, he offers his own life as sort of a case study. He mentions undergoing some kind of physical treatment. His surgeons finished with him, is the phrase. Sounds quite intense, and then he stopped eating pork and eventually all meat.
Then what happened?
He found he ceased drinking liquor with no effort. It just fell away. And he claims this purification, this change in his internal environment also led to personal magnetism.
Personal magnetism, like charisma.
Yeah. He claimed that children and pure women who used to be afraid of him were now drawn to him, responded with love. And for him, this proved that personal magnetism is simply the expression in matter of mind. Your internal state, shaped by your physical environment, like diet, radiates outwards.
So clean up the body, clean up the mind, the abdominal brain's stored actions, and your whole presence changes. It ties everything together.
It's his final illustration. The body as the immediate environment, diet influencing that, the mind as the sum of actions, and the observable effect on others, all under the umbrella of the law of suggestion. It's his ultimate proof by example.
Wow. Okay, so this whole deep dive into Santinelli, it really forces you to grapple with this incredibly radical idea.
Yeah.
Maybe free will isn't the driver. Maybe it is all just an inescapable law of suggestion.
Yeah, and if our minds are just these abdominal brains reacting, if our thoughts are forced, not chosen, what does that even mean for things like personal responsibility or self-improvement or how we structure society?
It really throws everything up in the air. It makes you ask, doesn't it? What unseen suggestions might be shaping your thoughts, your actions right now as you listen to this?
Exactly. And if Santinelli has even a grain of truth, what power do you really have to change things beyond trying to consciously curate your environment and the suggestions you expose yourself to?
It's a profound challenge to look past the surface, past easy explanations, and really question the deep causes that might be driving us, individually and collectively. Definitely something to chew on.